Hello everyone, it's Richard again. The story is nearly done. I can hardly believe it. But for nearly the last time, come back with me to the top of that hill. That large room inside the palace where the storytelling competition is taking place. We've heard some stories already. And the audience is agog. A strange audience, which includes a black cat and a mouse, and two giants peering in through the open doors. And there's a group standing next to a carved wooden horse. The mouse is standing on the horse's head, twitching its nose. There's an old woman standing there and a younger woman. And there's a young man and an older man with a grey beard. And the young woman has put up her hand and says, "I will tell the next story." And in the silence, she walks to the dais, up the steps. She stands there. She's wearing old clothes that have obviously been patched and repaired many times. She's very upright. She looks out into the audience and she says, "I will introduce you to my friends. But first, let me ask you 3 questions. What is the sweetest sauce to put on food? How do you have your best night's sleep? And, she asks, what's the best thing to protect yourself with from all the dangers of the world?" She looks around. People begin to call out answers. Chocolate sauce? Chili sauce? A feather bed? A water bed? Strong walls? Good locks? She shakes her head. She says, "Once I lived in a world of magic. Yes, once I read books of magic. Once I flew on the back of a flying black cat. Once I travelled across the oceans on the shoulders of giants. Once," she says, "once. But one day, the magic stopped. I was with my 3 friends and we were in a seaside town. And we had that wooden horse. That wooden horse could fly. I promise you, it could fly. And we were all planning to come here as quickly as we could to the City of Wonders. And to fly on that horse. We all sat on the horse, 4 of us. And we pulled the lever. But," she says, "nothing happened. We pulled it again. Nothing happened." And then the truth dawned on us. The only thing that would carry us to the City of Wonders was our own 2 feet. "So we started to walk," says the young woman. "We started to walk, and that little mouse, twitching its nose, always pointed us in the right direction. And we dragged that horse with us all the way," she says, "all the way, because we reckoned somewhere we could get it repaired. Day after day, we had to work. We had to find ways of living and surviving. Every evening we came back from the places where we'd been working and we talked and we helped and we encouraged each other, and the next day we got up and we did the same, day after day, month after month, year after year," said the young woman. "And now I'll answer those questions. The sweetest sauce to put on food is hunger. Because believe me, when you're hungry, anything tastes sweet. And the best night's sleep you can ever have is when your mind is at rest. And then you can sleep anywhere. And the best thing to defend yourself with, well, it's good friends. Let me introduce these 3 friends of mine to you, she says. That young man once lived in the kitchens when I lived upstairs in a world of light. But now he's like a brother to me. And that man with the grey beard, well, I know his life and his stories as well as I know my own. He's like a father to me. And that woman there, she says, pointing to the older woman who's gazing at her, standing next to the horse. That woman there is my mother. And I'm proud of her. And the young woman's eyes fill with tears. And she says, but there's one thing left for us. We've come here at last, but there's one thing left. We want to go home. And when she says that, there's a movement down at the bottom of the dais, in the corner where 2 men have been sitting. One is leaning against the shoulder of the other. He looks somehow broken and old. But he has raised his hand. And he says, if you want to go home, perhaps I can help you. And suddenly he's trying to stand up, and his companion is helping him to stand. And the man says, I will tell you my story. Listen. And slowly he walks up the steps of the dais with the other man helping him until they both stand there, and the young woman has stepped to one side, and they look out across the audience, and the man who seems so broken has a face like a skull, more skull than flesh, and his eyes are so pale as he gazes unblinking at the audience. And he looks at the man who's helping him to stand, and he says, this man is my brother. Once he was my greatest enemy, but now he is my closest friend. Because many years ago, I believed that I had been robbed of my inheritance, and I travelled through the world to gain magic power. And I gained it, says the man, and now his pale eyes are lighting, beginning to blaze. I gained that power. I could transform myself into animals, into birds, and I could turn myself into an owl. And he gazed, unblinking, round the audience. And with that power, I wanted to do my brother harm. But he never left his castle, never once. So I had to content myself with waiting when his wife left the castle, picking her up and dropping her on an island from which she would never return. And I had to content myself with waiting till his daughter left the castle, and then I fought her, and she had to escape on the back of a flying black cat. And then this man, my brother, left his castle, and I followed him. I followed him until he was in a valley. It was dark. And then I flapped my wings and I attacked him. He fought me off. He defended himself. I attacked him again, and I was preparing with all my power to descend on him one last time when the magic stopped. Yes, says the man, looking around with those eyes, pale, blinking. I fell to the earth. My power had gone. I was broken. But this man saved my life. And now he is no longer my enemy. He is my closest friend. And I have come here to correct the harm that I have done. And at that, the other man coughed in embarrassment and said, yes, well, that's good. But perhaps I should tell my story too. And the man with pale eyes nodded and smiled. And the storyteller, standing to one side, also nodded and smiled. And so will I. And tomorrow I will tell you what that story was and how all the stories finally come to an end. So until then, goodbye.